Good evening. My name is Jonathan Skinner. This is an introductory taster to the module Cultural Politics on Tour. I want to start by acknowledging that this module is taking place at the start of the Black History Month and in the context of a firmament of election race baiting in the United States, of Black Lives Matter protests, of discussions outlined by Meghan Markle and Prince Harry on institutional racism in the UK as well as in the US. And these are all very interesting and pertinent and important points for anthropologists who are concerned with the production, the circulation, the contestation of politics and how politics shifts and moves, relocates and is influenced by local cultures as well as global cultures. And this is to some extent what this module is about. So it's very topical. What you'll be seeing and reading in the newspapers and watching on television and living through is very much the subject of this module and is very relevant. I've deliberately given one image as the start of this overview, and this is a friend, colleague, performance artist, activist, hip-hop dancer, and a person who I've worked with as an anthropologist and has helped me in teaching my students for over a number of years. This is Tura Arutura, who is protesting about the lack of recognition of Black lives, in particular in a structured institutional fashion in Northern Ireland. And he's outside the City Hall of Belfast city centre, protesting. And if you follow up the article, you will see how he was unfairly treated in terms of the police using social distancing to thwart the protests. He features on the module in an article later on where we look at the aestheticization of violence, how debates on the streets can be translocated, can be moved and shifted into the dance studio and the performance room, the stadium, the stage. And pressingly, he is giving a webinar about Black Lives Matter's issues in Northern Ireland on Monday as the module starts between 6 o'clock and 7 o'clock. I would encourage you to try and attend this webinar, and it might help with your understanding of the cultural politics on tour topic, how it's conceived anthropologically, and how it relates to other aspects of the module. So in terms of an introduction, the module is Cultural Politics on Tour. And I really wanted to just begin in this introductory taster by breaking down those terms to try and give you a sense of what it's about, what shapes my thinking behind this, what is to some extent an anthropology of tourism, looking at heritage, looking at culture, looking at the production, the circulation, the distribution, the contestation. So what then are the theoretical underpinnings and ideas and themes that make this module a coherent whole, a cultural politics on tour? What is cultural politics and what is cultural politics on tour? These are important questions. When you look at the assessments, you'll see that it relates to one of the essay questions. So what is meant by cultural politics? Well, the first thing to note is that cultural politics does not signify two separate categories here. It is not culture separated from politics. The term cultural politics refers to the way that culture, including people's attitudes, opinions, beliefs, perspectives, as well as in the media and the arts, how that culture shapes society and political opinion, and how that gives rise to social, economic, and legal realities. Cultural politics, we might say then, understands culture, popular culture, mass media, as well as folk culture and the arts, not as something added to other more substantive domains, but as an arena where social, economic, and political values and meanings are being created and contested. And anthropologists have an expertise in this. We are the culture brokers looking at this subject matter. As such, we might say then that cultural politics is on the cutting edge of anthropology. It is the activist face. David Graeber sadly died recently. He was the person, the anarchist professor of anthropology, who coined the slogan, "We are the 99%." He fits in with this activist face, this concern for those marginalized subaltern people in society. So what we're talking about then is an engaged anthropology where protest is being examined, where neoliberalism is being defaced, where convention is being disgraced. This is Banksy in Israel as well as Weston-super-Mare. This is the graffiti on Winston Churchill's statue in Westminster Square, as well as on the Cecil Rhodes statue in Cape Town University, formerly. That will be the subject of the first lecture. This is Black Lives Matter in New York, as well as outside Heathrow Airport, as well as inside the quadrangle of Oriel College in Oxford. This is where the hashtag takes on symbolic significance. This is not then just anti-capitalism protesting, David Graeber's stance, the bullshit economies, the bullshitization of the administrative jobs that many people have in our social structures. This is about the production and circulation of the cultural domain, and hence it is of explicit interest to anthropologists for investigation. As culture brokers, this is directly anthropological, not just sociological subject matter. This is the Rhodes Must Fall movement from South Africa that precipitates a cultural relocation of ideas and activism to an autumnal Oxford at Oriel College. You might say that in these shifts and in these movements across space, through hypermedia, across social media, the migration of memes is astounding. The crossing of borders, the boundaries, the nation states. This is where the virtual becomes the place for transculturation. And in our lockdown, in our virtual communications and virtual presences, this has a particular prescience and immediacy. These are the empty meeting grounds defined by Dean McCannell. This is where the imperial eyes are viewed in an example of these transculturated places, according to Mary Louise Pratt. This is where Spivak's post-colonial subaltern evades censorship. These are theorists and ideas that we will elaborate upon as the module develops. So this topic, cultural politics on tour, is an advance on Ed Bruner, the anthropologist of tourism, recently deceased, who has a classic text, Culture on Tour, an anthropological take on culture clash in tourist meeting grounds. And I'd encourage you to have a viewing of a webinar over the summer where the work of Ed Bruner was memorialized and is celebrated his life. In Ed Bruner's work, Culture on Tour, one of the key texts for this module, and as you'll see, a conceptualization behind the cultural politics on tour, We have ethnography and tourism converging on the same object, the different, the distant. This is a global mashup, a maelstrom of radical hands, hearts, and hashtags making a difference, rewriting the present with its historical colonial symbols and structures, with monuments to a lost age. This is hashtag decolonization. This is meta movements, user-generated informal folk taxonomies spread in an unmoderated, non-moderate fashion. This is Proud Boys in the United States on one side. This is hashtag the webinar that Tour is organizing on the other in Belfast on Monday night. This is trendy shape shifts going to trending. They preoccupy us rather like Occupy tents once sat outside Westminster. So to sum up then, cultural politics is about the production, the circulation, the mediation, and the appropriation. It is evident in areas of contest, whether financial, such as the Occupy movement, racial, Black Lives Matter, the historical or heritage memorials from the Roads Must Fall campaigns that were successful in Cape Town and have been subverted and changed in Oxford, through to the contest for the return of the Elgin marbles from the British Museum, or the recent assessment of images and items associated with enslavement, the profits of an enslavement in Parliament, or the Pitt Rivers Museum in Oxford reevaluating objects that have a genetic provenance with peoples and belong to them rather than to the university's displays. But what then of the traditional points of contact, the clashes between Protestants and Catholics in Northern Ireland, for example? Is that so 20th century? Are some groups and issues being left behind as the hashtag replaces the pound, as socialism slips by to Corbynism? Is Brexit Britain moving forwards or backwards together, or fragmenting or revealing long existent fault lines? What is the lockdown doing for the national divides between nation states, or between the North and the South, between the metropoles and the peripheries? So this module is about exploring this cultural politics as we look at it as it goes on, as we go on tour and as it goes on tour. And we will take on issues from South Africa to Northern Ireland, from Hedonism 2 in Jamaica, a sex tourism hotel, to Dignitas in Switzerland, an assisted dying center. Conceptually then, what are the rhetorics and radicalization of this cultural politics? Join me on Monday for an elaboration on some of the content in this taster, and we will be looking at Alex Flynn's work in Brazil, where he looks at some of the radical activist performance players, the theatricalization of debates around the loss of land in Brazil, and linking that to the Roads Must Fall campaign as it shifts from the University of Cape Town, as it changed from being a Roads Must Fall changing of this memorial, this heritage statue, to becoming we should not pay fees, to becoming we should take down the effigy commemorating Rhodes in Oriel College, and the different arguments around this, the different reception it's had. And ideally, if you can come along to the webinar 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock on Monday. Thank you, and look forward to seeing you.